What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Melanin Militant. This is episode 13, Black Wall Street, what they didn't teach you in high school. Now, this will be the final Black History themed episode for February 2019. And as I said, this is about Black Wall Street, the all-black residential and business area that existed in the early 1900s in Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now, for a long time, I always heard the term Black Wall Street, and I didn't know that it was real. I thought, as I've said before, that I thought it was like when people say Black Twitter. I thought it was a metaphor or a figure of speech, but it was a real place that was thriving and prospering, an all-black town, all black-owned businesses, and it's such a staple in Black history. So I think it's imperative for Black people to know about this story. Even though it ended in such a tragic and violent way, I still believe that the existence of Black Wall Street should be the current measuring stick for Black people in America. Before I get into the episode, first order of business, please remember at the end of this video to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And I'm also in the midst of putting together a little competition for all my faithful viewers, and hopefully to gain more viewership, where the winner can win a $50 gift card. I'm not exactly sure what the competition will be, what the contest will be. I haven't ironed out all the details yet, but I'll make sure to let everybody know when I do get that figured out. So just make sure you keep coming back to the channel and sharing all these videos. Also, I want to put out there, or point out rather, what my shirt is today. This is made by the brand Unity BAM. BAM stands for By Any Means Necessary, which was like the famous quote and tagline of Malcolm X. This is their Kings Uplift King shirt. It's a really dope brand. Of course, you guys know I wasn't paid for this, but I'm always shouting out a great Black-owned brand. And I'll put the description, or in the description will be the link to their website. So now let's get into the episode. So at the end of the 19th century, Black people began migrating to Oklahoma from Mississippi, Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas. And some were also brought to the area by Native Americans as they were enslaved during the Trail of Tears from 1831 to 1838. A lot of credit is given to a wealthy Black landowner, O.W. Gurley, for founding Black Wall Street, as he bought 40 acres of land and exclusively rented it out to Black people. And by the end of 1906, the street was known as Greenwood Avenue. There were Black people who fled Mississippi that came as refugees to escape racial persecution. And Gurley would house these people in his residences. He had 3 two-story buildings and 5 residences. Another notable figure in the inception of Black Wall Street is J.B. Stafford, who believed that in order for Black people to strive and to thrive at that time point, they needed to pool their resources, work together, and support each other's businesses. So he too would house Black people in the real estate that he owned, and he exclusively sold it only to Black people. By the end of 1910, the population of Tulsa grows to 18,182 people, with Black people making up 10% of that. And that doesn't sound like much, but it's actually double of what the percentage was from 10 years prior. And it was in 1911 that Barney Cleaver became the first Black policeman in Tulsa. And that area was also thriving, with African Americans being very successful in the oil industry. And in 1915, we got the first grocery store owned by a Black person in that area, owned by the Goodwin family. Fast forward to 1921 now, where Black Wall Street is prospering. There's an abundance of wealth for Black people, and there was even 3 known millionaires in the area at the time. Mind you, $1 million back then would be equivalent to over $14 million today. And I'm just going to run down the many businesses and stores, etc., that the town had. There was a library, 2 public schools. The area was also home to the second lowest illiteracy rate in Oklahoma. 13 churches, an all-Black hospital, 2 newspaper companies, the Tulsa Star and Oklahoma Sun. And the owner of the Tulsa Star preached self-reliance and militant action to resist the efforts of the KKK. Black Wall Street also had bakers, 13 barbers, 4 hotels, law firms, 5 contractors, dentists, plumbers, tax specialists, blacksmiths, chiropractors, 2 gas stations, 6 real estate agents, 2 dressmakers, 4 shoe repairmen, 10 tailors, 41 meat markets, 30 restaurants, and 11 boarding houses. So I could go on and on and on with the many businesses that were in the town. And it's actually funny when you think about the fact that at this time things are segregated, but it almost did good, more good for Black people than bad, because we were forced to create a place for us to spend our own money, and the only place we could spend our own money was with other black people. So it's an interesting dynamic to think about. So here's the $1,000,000 question. What happened? If things are going so well and black people are striving, things are, seemingly as good as they could ever be, how could something so well come to an end? Well, there was one incident that would spark a race riot that would spell the demise for Black Wall Street. It was on May 30th, 1921, when a white 17-year-old female by the name of Sarah Page got on an elevator, and so did a black male by the name of Dick Rowland. Now, Sarah Page went to the police and told them that Dick Rowland tried to criminally assault her, and Rowland's account of the story was that he accidentally stepped on her foot when he got on the elevator, and she slapped him for it, and then he grabbed her to restrain her and prevent her from hitting him anymore, and then he fled from the elevator. The next morning, Rowland was arrested and put in jail, and a white-owned newspaper sensationalized the story as "Black man assaults white female." By 4 p.m. that day, white residents in the area started talks of lynching Rowland, and that news spread to the black neighborhood. And later that night, almost 2,000 white men and 75 black men gathered at the courthouse, and police tried to persuade everyone to go home, but before they could do so, a white man tried to grab one of the guns of one of the men that were armed in the crowd of black men, and a shot was accidentally fired from the weapon, and it struck a black man across the street. The two crowds try to disperse and run in opposite directions once that gunshot rings out, but the police start firing as well into the crowd, and another black male and another white male was shot, and an ambulance tried to come and give aid to the men, but the crowds were blocking the ambulances, and one of the men bled out in the street. Now, this is a full-on war now in the streets, and the police were ordered to prevent the black crowd from entering the white district, and the white residents started to loot stores in the neighborhood and steal guns and ammunition because they were surprisingly out-armed by the 75 black men. But being outnumbered and now fought by the National Guard, the black riders began to get arrested and subsequently even more outnumbered. They started to set buildings on fire. The National Guard used 8 planes to drop bombs of nitroglycerin on the area, and doors of homes were being kicked in, houses set on fire. An elderly couple was even shot in the back of the head while they were on their knees praying in their home, and the town began burning all the way into the following day, and the violence and looting and fighting and gunfighting just rang on all throughout the day. There was a church with approximately 50 black people barricaded inside that was set on fire, and the violence actually continued on for 14 hours before martial law was declared by town officials. After martial law is declared, firemen finally come, even though it's much too late for anything to be saved on Black Wall Street. Like I said, bombs were dropped by the National Guard on this area. Across the town, over 5,000 black people were being held under armed guard. An estimated 150 people died, and some say even upwards of 300. About 600 businesses on Black Wall Street were lost, and $4 million in property was damaged. And again, you got to remember what $4 million back then would be worth now, and when you adjust the number, it comes to about $181 million. And that was 12,000 properties and 12,000 properties that were damaged, equivalent to about 30 to 40 blocks, and 4,291 black people were made homeless from this race riot. And from there, the town of Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma, aka Black Wall Street, was gone. So what this all boils down to truly is a false accusation, then escalating to a sensationalized story, and then the white district of Tulsa, Oklahoma, trying to take justice into their own hands and take the life of an innocent black man. Not only that, it was also a plotted effort by the police of Tulsa, Oklahoma, to rid Oklahoma of this prospering area of black wealth. And that's not my opinion, that's actually a fact, because after the race riot, the chief of police in Tulsa, Oklahoma was tried and convicted of conspiracy and neglect. So you might look at this entire story as, one of sorrow, and you might look at it as just a tragedy, But again, I still look at it as the measuring stick for what black people can be and something that we can look forward to, because as I've said before, it's important to know what we once were so that we know that we can be that again. And that's not just, again, my opinion, that's a fact, because if you look in certain areas, there's certain pockets in the nation like Atlanta and Savannah, Georgia, where something reminiscent of a Black Wall Street is existing right now. And if you don't believe me, don't take my word for it. Go on Netflix and watch Killer Mike's Trigger Warning series, and he'll show you how the pro-blackness is just second nature for the people of all of Georgia, really. So something like Black Wall Street can exist again, and in some places on a smaller scale, it already does. Now, as I've said before, it's important for black people to know themselves. That way they can then empower themselves, and Black Wall Street is another example of that. But this isn't just a story that it's important for only black people to know. It's important for all Americans to know, because black history is American history. Thanks for watching.